Glashutte Original, Senator Excellence Panorama Date moon phase. This is a timepiece that is automatic winding by means of caseback winding mass, but can nevertheless be manually wound should the watch run down or should you wish to top it off by taking the crown in its first position flush to the case and turning 20 to 30 turns in the clockwise direction. In that first position, you'll see at a certain point the balance begins to beat, the second's hand begins to advance, and at this point you can set the time, set the date, set the moon phase, and wear the watch, and it will continue to wind itself. However, should you wish to continue winding the watch up to its maximum rated power reserve of approximately 100 hours, simply continue turning the crown in a clockwise direction. Eventually, you will reach the limit of travel for the bridle-style mainspring, which will slip by design to relieve any excess strain. So you cannot accidentally overwind this watch. Just listen for the click or tick from within the case, your audible sign the watch is now fully wound. The timepiece features a number of subsidiary setting modes. The first is engaged by pulling the crown out one detent from flush to the case, and now you can turn in a counterclockwise direction and advance the date. This is known as the quickset function. If you turn in the opposite direction in this intermediate middle position for the crown, you advance the moon phase. In the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you can see the slow advance of the moon phase. Now, it's best to first roll the watch through one turnover of the date and the moon phase so you know where you are in the AM-PM cycle. For example, I know I'm looking at PM right now, but if you picked the watch up from a stop, you might wish to first wind through one date change, just turn the hands through one date change so you know whether you're looking at AM-PM. It's also important to remember that the intermediate setting position should never be used between the hours of 8 p.m. and 4 a.m., as this is the period during which the automatic date change and automatic moon phase change are engaged, and you don't want to try to use a quick set while the watch is automatically engaged in changing those displays. The result can be damage to the movement, so that's another reason why I recommend advancing through the date change and the moon jump and getting out of that danger zone from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. before you make adjustments using the quick set functions. And how do you set the watch? Exactly like this. 2 detents out, or 2 positions out, all the way out, is the setting position for the crown. Now the timepiece should be set using a known accurate reference. For example, when you go online and look up an atomic clock, usually maintained by governments, and you can find one that is correct to your time zone, you want to set the correct hour and the next nearest minute, and you want to stop the seconds hand at the index at 12, because that's effectively the start of the minute. So let's say where I am, it is 6:35 p.m. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my watch to 6:36, so I'll be at most 60 seconds ahead of the time represented by the online atomic clock. And I'm going to wait for it to catch up, and the moment what's on my dial matches what's on the reference time, I push that crown back in, and now they're synchronized. It should also be mentioned that when you're setting the moon phase, there is a handy tool you can use. Online moon phase displays are available and will show you the correct phase and age of the moon. And this is important because it can be somewhat difficult given just how fine the jumps of the moon phase display are. You can see how slowly it moves out of the aperture. There's a 29.5-day moon phase, so it can be difficult to get the watch to represent exactly the moon phase for a given night if you're doing this visually. What you want to do is you want to go online and look up the age of the moon. And once you've looked up the age of the moon, you want to create a new moon, that is no moon visible on the moon phase display, and then turn 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks, or however many days the moon phase is into its progression. So by turning that number of clicks, the age of the moon, and making that the number of adjustments, you don't have to use the eyeball to set the moon phase correctly. You will set it by age rather than by sight. Now it's important to recall that there are some handling restrictions that come with any fine timepiece, and the primary areas of hazard are water, magnetism, and shock. This timepiece is water resistant. Geo watches always describe their water resistance on the caseback to 50 meters. Glashutte Original represents that this is sufficient for splashing, inadvertent rainstorms, times when the watch might get wet inadvertently. But keep in mind, though the watch is water resistant leather, A porous natural material never is water resistant, and it should always be kept remote from moisture. If it gets wet, dry it quickly, and if you know that the watch is going to get wet, put it on a water resistant band first. The timepiece also needs your help avoiding accidental drowning. Always keep the crown flush to the case and neither wind nor set, not just while the watch is submerged, but also while the watch is wet. Treat a wet watch like a submerged watch. Therefore, don't actuate any functions when the watch is wet to avoid bypassing the case seals and introducing water to the interior of the timepiece. It's also important to remember that lubricants and seals will age with time, and the watch will be relatively less water resistant than when it first left the factory. Therefore, Glashutte Original recommends, on at least an annual basis, having your watch dry water tested at an authorized dealer where this can be done quickly and easily and for free. This is also a good time to have the total condition of the watch checked to see if a full service may be necessary. Magnetism, unlike water, is unseen, and it's ubiquitous. Now, this timepiece from the Senator Excellence family does use a silicone hairspring, so it has more resistance to magnetic fields than a standard timepiece. However, extreme magnetic flux can still alter the timing precision of the watch. Therefore, Glashutte Original recommends that you keep the watch remote from powerful magnetic sources such as MRI equipment, powerful electronics, or static magnets in speakers, subwoofers, the closures of wallets, purses, and refrigerator doors. The timepiece is also vulnerable to shock and concussion. It's important to remember that although the watch does have shock protection built into its balanced staff and thus is able to deal with a certain amount of vibration and resonance on the wrist, nevertheless, highly concussive activities can damage the movement, undermine the water resistance of the case, discharge the sapphire crystal, or even stop the movement altogether. Therefore, the company recommends that you keep the watch disused during concussive activities such as batting, tennis, golf, firearms marksmanship, or the riding of snowmobiles, ATVs, or mountain bikes. Ultimately, every fine mechanical timepiece requires a comprehensive overhaul. Per Glashutte Original, this is every 3 to 5 years, and the way you'd know is during your annual water test, have the total condition of the watch checked by your authorized service center. If necessary, a full service will involve the replacement of worn strap, restoration of your case to factory finish, restoration of water resistance, and cleaning, oiling, and adjustment of the movement to keep chronometer grade time. Ultimately, if a service is necessary, perform exclusively with an authorized service center or the factory itself, as these agencies solely have the trained personnel, specialized tools, and original Glashutte Original factory parts to maintain the value of your watch as both instrument and as investment. Moreover, only these agencies are able to back all labor and parts invested with a factory service warranty. Finally, visit our website at govbergwatches.com and call, text, or email our experts, including myself, who will be happy to walk you through every phase of the usage and care of this or any Glashutte Original fine timepiece.